you know, when I say you, I'm just like generalizing, you know, I'm just putting that term out there. You as a person, you've created a lifestyle for yourself, and you are now considered middle class, right? So you can afford servants. You have a gardener outside, and you have a maid that lives within the house. Maybe even you have a cook, right? You're trying to make your life easier for yourself. But what about the people that are coming in to live with you? I mean, you give them food and accommodation. That's nowhere near enough. That's nowhere near enough. What about what they have outside that unit that you've brought them in? You know, they've got children, they've got extended families to look after, and so on and so forth. It is not enough to say, I'm going to give them $50, let's say, let's use the US currency. I'm going to give them $50 a month. How far, for example, does that $50 take you as a person with your family? How far does it take you? It doesn't take you very far. So that in itself is slavery already. That in itself is slavery. Yes, there are no terms and conditions and so on. So there's no contract, right? So having taken this person away from their maybe environment, they're thinking you are going to.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, Emertha. How are you doing? Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Lovely to see you again.
Thank you. Nice to see you again, too.
It's not your first time. I think the third time, but I
Yes.
guess the new people want to know who Heather is. So maybe a bit of introduction. I know we've been together for about 3 times.
Yeah. No, I'm just a person who's interested in the whole system of anti-trafficking and modern slavery. And it's just something that I'm very, very interested in, and I have a passion for it. So I campaign against trafficking and slavery.
Right. Amazing, amazing. You know, Heather, we've had a couple of victims of slavery here in the
Yeah,
UK
yeah.
who are originally from Africa. This really kind of, struck my mind. I was like, oh, these people actually come all the way from home. Then I was like, okay, what do you come here to do? Mostly domestic workers. So I looked at the domestic slavery. But again, this is not only here. I try to remember back at home all the people that we have in our houses working for us,
Yeah.
and how much do we pay them. Is that kind of slavery? Is that a culture? What do you think about that? Really, I kind of said probably everybody's I mean, someone has a slave in the house, but probably they don't see that as a crime. They don't see that those people as slaves. But really, seeing their working condition, I think they are slaves. But probably they don't know that they're doing something wrong. What do you think about that, Heather?
Yeah. It's, it comes right back. If you go back in history, really, where we had our African kingdoms. African kings and queens had their people that worked for them, slaves, if you like, servants, that's a better term. But how they then looked after their servants is probably different from what we have here. We are probably have been influenced by our former colonial masters who have set the standard, you know. Them having come into Africa noticed that they could use people as servants in their houses as domestic servants, but then we've taken that on in the decades following. We've taken that on, but we haven't actually been very fair about how we treat these people that are in our houses, that look after our children, that look after our household, and we haven't been very, very fair about how we treat them and the conditions in which they live within our household. If you take a look at it, really, the whole social structure in Africa. We've got this social strata that we don't seem to want to get rid of within ourselves as Africans, as nationals of a country. For example, if you look at people that are less educated than us, they are coming into a middle class household and doing that sort of work. And as long as we keep stratifying our society, we will never really get rid of that situation where people are subservient to us. And that sort of thing is what I campaign for, and that has to change. If you're going to have people in your household looking after your children whilst you're going off to work to earn money, to look after your households, to look after your needs, then you need to be fair about how you're going to look after that person, first of all, how you're going to pay them. And there's got to be some sort of national minimum wage that has to be put into place so that these people are not treated like slaves. So that's where we have a problem, because these people are coming in with no solidified conditions, and people, we're taking advantage of them. You can, we start local. If we start local from within a certain country, let me say Zimbabwe, for example, if you look at it, people are being taken advantage of because the rate of unemployment is so high, so a person that comes in and you bring in a servant, they are grateful for coming in and working for you, but you then take advantage of them and their vulnerability and use them, and that is not the way to go at all.
So they literally get that payment in kind in terms of food and accommodation. Some of them don't never get even money from their employers, if you like. So
Yeah.
just like every person is already poor, eating is like a miracle. They don't know where the next meal is coming from, and
yeah,
they're just in the condition. So you take that situation of that person. So it's not really helping them. And I'm just wondering what those people have in their mind. If you are taking advantage of someone because they're poor, they're living in a poor and vulnerable conditions, and you just give them food, that's good, and accommodation, that's good. But what is their, what's the next step? What do you think their life is going to be like? Yeah, it's good that you are actually campaigning against that, Heather, and I'm really, really with you. So again, this doesn't sound like something wrong when it comes to our African community, especially back at home, because everybody has got a servant at home. And
yeah.
there's no
Mm-hmm.
such a minimum wage, there's no contract,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing like that. But when we talk about slavery, we always think of those days, and we think of those people leaving their countries, going maybe to the Middle East or coming to Europe or going to America, but we don't look at ourselves. That's really, something that really, I just seem don't to understand why can't we look at ourselves? That servant you have in the house, how much are you paying them? What can they do with that money if you are told you're paying them? What do you think they can make life with that money? Yeah, it's just like one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's very unfair. I mean, if you look at you, when I say you, I'm just like generalizing. I'm just putting that term out there. You as a person, you've created a lifestyle for yourself, and you are now considered middle class, right? So you can afford servants. You have a gardener outside, and you have a maid that lives within the house. Maybe even you have a cook, right? You're trying to make your life easier for yourself. But what about the people that are coming in to live with you? I mean, you give them food and accommodation. That's nowhere near enough. That's nowhere near enough. What about what they have outside that unit that you've brought them in? They've got children, they've got extended families to look after, and so on and so forth. It is not enough to say, I'm going to give them $50, let's say, let's use the US currency. I'm going to give them $50 a month. How far, for example, does that $50 take you as a person with your family? How far does it take you? It doesn't take you very far. So that in itself is slavery already. That in itself is slavery. Yes, there are no terms and conditions or so and so on. So there's no contract, right? So having taken this person away from their maybe environment, they're thinking you are going to change their lives for them, but you're actually making it worse, because then, and there's like, you give them that $50, there's no off day, there's no, you're working from 9 to 5, there's no even 9 to 6 o'clock or anything like that. They wake up early in the morning.
Actually 24 hours
Yeah.
around the clock.
Yeah,
Those people, anytime something happens, you just say, wake up, do this, do this. It's actually
Yeah.
24 hours. They're always alert. They might
Yeah.
hate me.
Yeah, and there's no line drawn across what you should or shouldn't do when it comes to work. As long as you are there and there's things to do, there's children to look after, cooking, cleaning, you are doing all that to give that family a comfortable life. And what have you got? You're losing yourself as an individual, because as it is, you have nothing else outside that environment, and what happens afterwards, like you're getting older or something like that, and then you've got no savings, you've got nothing to say to yourself, I've worked, I've done this, now I can retire from this job. In fact, they make you feel like you should never be able to leave that job because of the way you're so bonded.
Yeah, and that is actually a vicious cycle of poverty, because that poor person who have poor children and poor children, because that kind of condition, no saving, maybe not even able to send his children to school.
That's right.
So the same children will probably give birth the same children, and that is a poverty. So, and that is done by someone, your neighbor, someone you speak the same language, you have the same culture, and that's somebody really taking advantage of your situation.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we are doing this within ourselves. Historically, in Africa, we used to have this, as I said, we had this thing instilled in our minds by our former colonial masters, where a certain maybe tribe was deemed lower than a certain other tribe within the same national, the same citizens, maybe, let's say. Or like where I come from, in Zimbabwe, there was a time, the Federation era, right, that certain nationals, Malawians, that were coming into Zimbabwe, were coming in for work. And my people as Zimbabweans, there was this thing about like looking down on them a little bit, like they can do that sort of job. We're not going to do this sort of job, but this is our own country, right? So that was instilled in us by our former colonial masters. But I'm just saying, this sort of thing has to change. There's human rights out there. Everybody has got a right to be out there to demand fair wages, fair working conditions, and just be a a revered citizen of the world.
Yeah. But we should also remember that some people have no choice but to work for someone just for food and accommodation. That's another thing.
Yeah,
Because some people.
yeah, and I'm saying, if you think that you need hired help within your household, be fair enough to sit down and say, can I afford this? Before you even employ a person, sit down to, or like husband and wife, sit down and look at it and say, can I afford a new cook, or can we afford a cook? Can we afford house help? Let's put our money together and let's see where we can come together and be fair on wages. That's the one thing. Be fair on wages. That way, this is where you also get a problem where, if you're not paying your house help enough, there's been reports of abuse to your children. Do you see what I mean? As a way of revenging. And if you were in a situation to be paying a person fair wages, you wouldn't really be going through this sort of thing, because then they would be in a position to say, look, this person's being fair to me. I'm able to send my children to school. I'm able to have off days to do what I want with my time. I'm able to save and maybe build a little house in my village. So there are all sorts of things that affect that person as an individual and your household as well.
That's right. That's right. But again, sounds like those people who are doing it, they should probably have that, moral obligation to do the right thing.
Yeah, but that's where the whole argument is that there is no moral obligation. I mean, there are some people there that are very fair about what they pay, right? But nobody is there. There's no policing it. Do you see what I'm saying? There's no policing it to say nobody comes around and knocks on your door and interviews your house help to ask, are you getting fair wages? Do you know this is the minimum wage? Do you know these are the conditions you're supposed to have as a domestic worker? Do you know you're supposed to have 2 off days a week, or a break of 2 hours of lunchtime, or an hour of lunchtime every day to cook for yourself? Do you know that you're supposed to have your own room, and so on and so forth? Nobody polices that. So obviously that is going to be the case for a very long time if we don't have an organization maybe of domestic workers that are going to stand up, for example, and say, look, enough is enough. We need to be treated much better than we are being treated now.
That's right. That's a good point, Heather. Really, we have to advocate for them, I think, and also raise awareness, because this has to stop. We can't claim that being slaves, something happened, but yet we are actually enslaving other people.
Enslaving our own people. That's right. Yeah. I mean, let's take a look at the case of, because we were talking about domestic workers, that's nationally within your own country. We also touched on the case of my fellow citizen there, my fellow Zimbabwean, Auntie Chipo. Remember her? That was a case that really broke my heart. She was brought in by people that she trusted, fellow Zimbabweans, booked a flight for everything. She came in and then she started working for these people. What they had promised her was not what she was getting. In fact, initially she did get paid whatever they agreed, but then within the next following months and so on, she never got it. And then she lived with these people for 10 years. Now, can you imagine? It was quite elderly already. She was late 40s. Yeah. Can you imagine? She had left her children back home with the promise that she would be looking after her children and sending money home so that her children could have a better life, so that she, at the point of retirement, maybe would be able to then go back home, having built a house or something like that, something solid that she would have said, I was in the United Kingdom, I worked, my children are now have their own families and so on and so forth. She hasn't been able to achieve that. She's been here 20 years.
No, 20 years. I think more than that.
Yeah, probably more than that now. Probably more than that. Yeah, because she was lifted from that one family and she moved across to another family, and it was a case of from the frying pan into the fire, because nothing really improved for her life when she moved across to other families. So I'm just saying, we need to be a little more sensitive about people and their lives and people and their families when we're taking on domestic workers.
So we are talking to our fellow Africans, whoever is following us, know that if you are hiring someone to work for you, pay them well, change their lives, but don't exploit them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Take the story of Keza, the same story as Chipo.
Yes.
And she was actually brought by a relative.
Yeah.
And she was also enslaved for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
By a relative, moving from home to home.
Yeah.
She's now in her she's in her early how old, I don't know, but she's actually approaching her retirement age. And
that's her whole that's her whole working life gone. Her whole working life gone. I mean, look at Auntie Chipo at 67 or whatever she is now. Where is she going to have that energy to start life all over again? After having had that 20 years taken away from her, where is she going to have that energy to start all over again? And all her goals and that, they're just gone straight down the toilet. You know what I mean? There's nothing left for her in terms of, I'm not saying it's a hopeless situation, but having been brought into this country where she wasn't aware of the immigration process, she wasn't aware of things just happening around next door to her or anything like that. She wasn't even aware of where she was per se. You know, like if you had to ask her, show us Wales on a map, she'd probably not know exactly where she was. So it's exploitation to a point where you are taking away somebody's individuality. And that is a total human rights violation on top of just being just a person who is not feeling anything for anybody else. I mean, could you put yourself in that position where your human rights get taken away like that? Would you not stand up? Would you not be in a situation to stand up and say something? I'm sure you would look for a way to stand up and do something about it. I mean, she has a health condition which needed medical attention. Did she know what to do about it? No, she didn't. She didn't. She was so disadvantaged to a point where she was ill in that household, and she couldn't seek for help until much, much later. And that is just not right. I'm sorry. We need to do something about it. I mean,
people have to just be human. Be human. Just imagine if this was your mother in the position of Chipo or Keza or your sister.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that most of those people, actually, the so-called educated people, they come here to work. They need someone to look after their kids as they go to work. What kind of education is that?
But that's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's people like that, the educated ones, most of the time, that think they can take advantage of people because they have better things to do with their time, right?
What's the point of being educated? What do we learn? What is education? Yeah, we are people to change things, to make a difference. I mean, a positive impact in our communities. But if you are educated and you have a good job and you're exploiting someone in your household, that someone has a family, that someone has life, that someone has dreams, and you're killing it all. Yeah,
there's a great element of selfishness in some of these people that are educated, because for them it's just them driving their ambitions for themselves and not thinking about anybody else. I mean, at what point then do you? I know some people that are quite good. They may bring in people and they'll say, look, I will bring you in. You look after my children for a while, whatever. We live together. I give you a salary and whatever. But I also want you to go back to school. I also want you to learn English. But that's a very limited number of people that would do that for other people. But the majority just couldn't care less. They really don't care.
So what do we do? What do we do? What do we do to stop this? Because
what we need, what we need to do to stop this is to ask the assistance of neighbors. If as a neighbor you suspect there is somebody who's been enslaved within your area, within your community, stand up and say something. Approach the local council and say, look, I occasionally see this person who's like this and this like that, but I never really see them getting out of the house or talking to other people or whatever. They don't seem to have any sort of social interaction with anybody else. I suspect they may be a slave, And then, the council and the immigration and police and stuff like that will take a look at that. And then, of course, when we're talking about immigration, really, there is that element of fear that's instilled in these slaves, because your employer will tell you, oh, if you go out there, you'll find the police and they'll take you away. If you go out, don't talk to anybody, because your immigration status is like this and this like that, whatever. You are not in a situation to be able to be out there with other people and interact and mix and mingle, because it's a disadvantage for your employer, isn't it, to have for you to walk away, to lose you, because then their lifestyle will then change negatively if that goes wrong, So I'm just saying, So I'm just saying to people out there, if you come across people that seem to be uncomfortable, seem to be vulnerable, very scared, have a fear of being out there. There's something behind that, approach them, ask them, if you get a chance to see them, approach them and ask them, how are you living, and what do you do for these people? Are you a relative? Do you work for them? And so on and so forth. And see if you can find help for them discreetly, not make a big hoo-ha about it. Find a way of contacting the immigration or police or local council discreetly so that you can assist these people, because we are not always in a situation where we find them, where they're readily available. They are there, hidden away discreetly, and we need to find a way to get them out there to start living like human beings.
What about those who are still back at home but still exploiting others, and like employing young children, employing those people and pay them almost a peanut or nothing of, just accommodation and food? What can you tell them?
For people like that, it's when you're not on the ground and you don't really know what's happening in terms of if any policies have been set in. But obviously, any country with a rule of law has child abuse policies set in, child employment policies set in. I would like to urge people in Africa, back home, wherever you are, if you see a child working on the fields, an argument could be, oh, it's a relative of ours, whatever, because has children belonging to a family, you learn how to be on the field and grow crops and stuff like that. That's a different case from a child who's been taken away from the environments of their own family to work for somebody else, to benefit an employer. That's a totally different case. So I'm just saying, if you find there's a gangmaster out there who seems to have a habit of employing children, be on the alert, be fair, contact the local authorities, and just give them a heads up about what these people are up to, because I know there's a lot of that that's going on. Aside that, then there's children that are being kidnapped and taken away for slavery out of the country, and has sex slaves as well, and so on and so forth. So we need to be quite vigilant in keeping our eyes open and saying something. Don't be afraid to say anything, because when it comes to children and forced labor, it's just not right. These children have a future, and we cannot suppress or oppress children that are up and coming and have nothing to do with all this slavery and trafficking that's going on, that has been put in place by gangmasters.
You know what, Heather? That's so amazing. Thank you so much for the advice.
Thank you.
And
You're welcome.
I hope people will be able to learn so much from your advice and from our conversation, obviously. I'll definitely bring you back. I hope to see you again soon. And guys,
I'll be here. I'll be here. We are on lockdown. I don't know how long lockdown is going to be. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
No. So guys, just to share this and help us to share this message to reach thousands of people, and definitely to make a difference in people's lives, because we've got to all work together and slavery. Thank you so much, Heather, and see you next time.
Thank you, Emertha. You're welcome. See you again.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye now.